Welcome to day 15 of the Spring 2025 Web Technologies course. I'm Jim Kaufman with Rankin Technical College. So today's lecture, we're just kind of go over very briefly. There's not really much to discuss, but we're going to go over. There's three labs, and I'm going to spend a little more time on the second lab, lab 2. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly go over lab 1 and lab 3. And then I'm going to spend a little bit more time on lab 2. This lab 2 is not going to really be a code along. I'm just going to make some suggestions on that, just try to help you out a little bit. And we'll go from there. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at these labs. So the first one is lab 1, chapter 9 lab. And this is a lab called Flex Shop. And actually, there's a YouTube playlist here, which was created by our instructor, Mr. Gudmanstead. And so you just follow through this. This is a code along. Start from scratch. It's not too long here. It's broken down in sections here. A few minutes. Some got 10 minutes or so in sections. So you just follow along and basically follow along. It's a code along. Turn in that assignment. You should be good there. As far as also on the as far as the images, I added this part because I don't think this mentioned anything about where the images were. I don't think he goes through that. But if you go to the main page of the course and you go down here, and then on the right hand side you've got this Flexbox images. So you just want to go ahead and download that, and that'll be all the images for that Flexbox. Okay. What else did I want to mention about this? So, this was created, some years ago, even though it's very relevant, not really much has changed. One of the things I know that I think he uses a little bit of inline styles, which, we know that, in current times, it's really not a good idea. It's kind of not best practices to either use embedded or in a external style sheet, right, as opposed to inline. So if you want to leave it inline, that's fine. I think there's a couple places that he talks about having inline styles. You can do that, but or if you prefer, which is best, go ahead and put it in, either embedded style sheet or an external style sheet. Okay, but this is pretty straightforward. Not much to really add on this. Let's see. And then this is lab 3. I'm going to go skipping lab 2 for now. So lab 3, I think, is a little bit easier than lab 2. So that's kind of why I'm hitting this like in this order. So here's, make sure you look at the mock-up. So you got a logo at the top. You got some navigation, right? You have a couple sections here at the bottom. So the important things to point out here, and you're going to learn once you get done with that code along, and that'll help you with this one. And maybe it's up to you, your choice. If you want to go from lab 1, I would definitely do the lab 1, which is the code along first, Flexbox. Then after that, if you want to do lab 3 before you do lab 2, it might be a little easier for you. That's your choice. Okay. Do it whatever order is best for you. So as far as this one here, you're just creating, some basic elements here on the page: a header, a nav bar, a main, a footer. You're coming up pretty much with your own content here, right? So not much. And then, you'll have to spend some time. I kind of went over media queries a little bit yesterday. We'll talk about them a little bit again today. So you have different breakpoints: 600, 900, 1200, and 2500. And once again, really not much to really discuss on this. Pretty much straightforward as far as the directions are concerned. Obviously, implementing it, takes a little bit more work. So some of these things, obviously, these layouts are sometimes confusing, I know, to, you change one thing, and you don't get the results you expect, and it takes a long time to really be good at it. And even instructors and that, someone who's not using it all the time, if you're not doing this day in, day out, it's a little more of a challenge, right? So it takes more creativity. It's creativity is part of it, but then also it's really understanding the rules of every single thing, right? How everything interacts with everything else, right? And it just takes time. It's a learning process. So, all right. So I guess we can get rid of those. And then here's lab 3. Here is the mock-up for this. This is at the bottom of the page. Now for this one here, or this is lab 2. So yeah, the here's the mock-up, and this is kind of more of a full screen view of what it's going to look like. But for this lab, we're actually doing it from a mobile, okay, from a mobile standpoint, right? We're doing mobile first here, right? It says right here, using mobile first techniques to implement this page layout. So when we say mobile first, what we're doing is when we're talking about Flexbox, so with Flexbox, you've got rows and columns, right? So with a mobile first perspective, you're going to probably have things more in a column perspective, right? You want to build it with columns first rather than with rows. So I'm going to show you something I was kind of working on a little bit. Nothing spectacular or anything, but so here's a thing. I kind of worked on this a little bit last Friday. So it's called, I just create a fictitious name here, Midwest Watch Company. Not that I'm really into watches. I don't even wear watches. But so we got Midwest Watch Company. And then, so here's the links to it. The different sections. This is, similar what it's saying to do in the lab. Okay. And as you know, as this grows, things will change a little bit. Obviously, more than the text. This text is going to always change depending on your size here. But when you see this thing flip here in a second, when it reaches a certain thing, that's when it hits a break point, using right there. That hit that break point, and so that changed this. But when we're creating something for mobile first, we're creating it in this from this perspective. This would be mobile first view, right? Everything's pretty much column, right? And there was a side thing was on the right hand that's going to be on for the desktop view is going to be on the right hand side, but for this mobile view, it's actually moved to the bottom here, okay? And we actually do that using the media queries. We end up doing that, right? So the media query actually is moving it from the bottom underneath to over here on the right hand side when it reaches that 600 pixels. Okay. So that's just a quick little site that I kind of put together Sunday just to, kind of demonstrate a few different things here. Probably the reason I did is I was just looking for some product pictures, and it was kind of the easiest thing to come up with. And so that's one of the things you're going to have to, you're going to come up with this fictitious business, and you're going to need to get some product pictures. So as far as that's concerned, not that you can't figure this out on your own, but what I would just do is, so what I did is I actually just did a Rolex watch photos, and then I looked at images, and then I just found some where they were consistent, very consistent ones. Usually it's especially it's from the same company. Obviously, if you're building a commercial website, a real website, you don't want to be using people's images because, there might be copyright or that. But, just for our student purposes, for educational purposes, I don't see no harm in grabbing some images. So it depends on what your product is, but, I would just search for images. Like right here, you just actually right click, save image as, which, I'm sure everyone's kind of done before. But That's what I kind of did. Just found some different ones and just right clicked, save image as, and then added that to my folder. Okay. So that's that. So basically we're going to have a header and a side, which that aside, like I showed you there, was on that right-hand side for the desktop view. And for the mobile view, it's down at the bottom. And we're going to have a footer. So just the main tags there. All right. So what did I want to do here? All right. So one thing I kind of want to go over a little bit. And so first, when you kind of come in here, I'm just got this lab 2. You just use your lab, your HTML lab. I probably should have had that. So your lab within your local repository. Then I would create some folders. One for images, and then one for you can call it styles or CSS, right? That's up to you. And then create a new file called index.html. And here we just start with the basic template, right? I'm going to go through abbreviations a little bit to show you. I don't know if anyone's kind of played with them at all yet, except for just creating this template, but I'm going to just go through a few of those just because it can kind of help you with developing web pages, websites, right? So, and then obviously always give your page a title. And then here I'm going to create a new file. So I think if you have a styles folder, if you call it CSS, then I wouldn't create a file the same as the directory. Sometimes people use site.css is for like the whole website, and then do individual pages. They have separate ones for individual pages as well. Okay. So one thing I wanted to kind of start here with, and I'm not going to be building this whole thing, but I just kind of wanted to go through a few things. And the first one is in the CSS, you got it like an HTML here. Oh, sorry. And this is basically setting the font size. You can set the font size for the entire page. This is kind of at the HTML level, so at the very top level here. And you put like, this would be this is actually the default anyhow. But it's good for testing purposes. So what we're going to do is we have our other fonts that we'll have other fonts on the page, might have some different sizes. And so we can actually change this for testing purposes. We can change this font to see how the other fonts change as well. Okay. And then I'm just going to do a font family here of, let's see, I'll just do that there. I'm going to save that. Okay. So another thing I want to go over real quick here. So a lot of times, you're doing margins and padding, and you're giving it number values. And I know a lot of times we did a lot of pixel related stuff, right? Giving it pixels. But what could be beneficial here on doing this? So at the HTML level, I created a 16 pixels as being my default font size. So what actually you can do here is if let's just say you've got something, and if you start out using margins in your page, you can come back and change them later, because I know it's just easier to do some pixels and that, because the EMs are a little different, right? But the importance of using the EM or the REM for your instead of the pixels is the REM units are relative to the root's element font size, right? So the one we're creating, the one we define in the HTML up top in the CSS. So if you use the REMs, this allows your layout to scale gracefully when users adjust their browser's font size, or actually like use the different assistive technologies, different screen readers, and so forth. So it's very beneficial to do that. I know a lot of developers probably don't do that, but there's definitely benefit in doing that. But one thing you can do here is that you can always set your size if your default size for some reason is different. But if you have something like 10 pixels, well, so what's 10 pixels going to be in EMs, right? And if so, I convert this so that's your number you would use. Okay. And then also you can actually come down here too, and it will show you based on. I don't like how that did that there. I don't know why that does that like that. Let's see what we got here. I guess you got to choose this. Yeah. So yeah, that's how this works down here. So you choose your default. So you click on what you're using as your default. Then you can go and say, well, 5 pixels. This is what number you use. This is what number you use for 10 pixels, right? This is for 20 pixels. So if you're wanting to kind of convert, right, convert back and forth, you use these instead, right? And I'll show you some examples of that where I'm kind of doing that. And then also you can always just also put it right in here too and hit convert, and that'll tell you what the number should be, right? So we got that, and then I want to show you in our HTML. I hate this thing's always up here. You probably can't see this, but it's a thing for the Microsoft Teams. What do I want to do here, body? So let's go ahead and yeah, here. So the next thing I want to show you a little bit of is the abbreviations. So, well, let's create a header first, and then inside that header, I want to do an A tag, and I want to do we're just going to do pound there, and I want to do a class of logo. And inside of here, I want to do an image. Need to go grab my images. So let me do that real quick here. Let me grab my images and drop them over there. That's my watch images and stuff, and a logo image. Let's see what I got here. Hopefully it'll let me do this that I want to do. Okay, so that's that. All right. So here, I want to grab my image for my logo. And I have this watch logo. And you always want to add an alt tag. we don't really need to do anything more on that. All right. And then I'm going to do an H1 tag here. I'm going to do a Midwest. And I wanted to kind of show you this little shortcut here, what you can do here. And this is using those abbreviations, okay? So what you can do here, so what I'm wanting to do here is I want to create some navigation here. So one thing you can do here is do this. Nav, UL, unordered list, then a list, and then I use the ×5, right? I want 5 different ones. And then I can also put href equals. I'm going to put a £sign here, and then I'll explain what each of these actually kind of does here. So, you know, basically you can create a nav, right? And then under your nav, you're creating an unordered list. It's showing you what it's creating right down here, right? So this $sign is just putting, you know, kind of junk type, I don't want to say junk, but puts a little content in there, just something, right? So just hit an enter here, boom, it'll create this. So, you know, you don't have to use that. It's just kind of a shortcut, especially if you get used to doing that. You know, you can create these rows. Otherwise, you can just, you know, cut and paste or, you know, do each one. You know, it's not that difficult either. But, you know, you get used to using those abbreviations. It can be very beneficial. You get things done a lot quicker, right? So let's see what did I have for this? I had, I think, home, about, all right, so I got that. We got class logo, got that nav like that. Looks good. Okay. I'm going to go back to my CSS here. Oh, I need to add that, don't I? Definitely need to do that, add that. So I'm going to do the link. And the style sheet, and my href is going to be my styles site CSS. Okay, there's that. And then here, let's get my HTML, which is my default font size for the whole page. I'm going to give this, I think I'll do a body tag here. And I'll do a background color. And I think I have one over here to use. All right. And, you know, maybe I'll put a little margin. So basically what here, this margin 1.25, so it's basically 16, actually 16 and plus, you know, so there's 1.25, that's actually, so this is the same thing as saying 20 pixels, okay, 1.25. And you can use that thing like it was in W3 schools or whatever. You know, if you do want to use pixels, that's fine, but really it's not the best. It's really, you should use something more relative where pixels is absolute, right? But that's how, and like I said, if you want to start out using pixels just for your own purposes, and you can come back and change them to rems. That's fine as well, right? So remember, rem is there's EM and REM. So REM is actually root, right? If you just do the EM is if it's, it actually tells you here, don't it, shorthand property now. No. But if you use EM, it's going to be relative to the parent, right? So obviously body, what's the parent is HTML. But when if you get down to where you've got an ordered list and, if you got a ordered list and you got list items, the parent to that is the ordered list, right? So if you end up changing your font, you might have 16 pixels here. If you ended up having ordered list, I'm just using an example, the ordered list, unordered list, whatever, and you change the font size to 12, then if you do, and in your list item, you ended up doing something, an EM on that one, on the list items, it's going to actually do, it's going to be relative to that parent and not to this root, right? So in this case, I'm making them all relative to the root. And that's kind of like preference, whatever you want to do on that, you just have to realize how that kind of works more than anything else. So what else I want to do here? So we have a header. So I'm going to do a header. Let's do background color. Just black. Which I want to be consistent here, so I think I'll do the pound Fs 4, 5, 6. Obviously, I'm sorry. Black is all zeros. White is Fs. Obviously, you can use a shortcut. A lot of times, as far as best practices, I've kind of heard, I've read different things, but a lot of times, they say it's best to use all 6 of them for just consistency's sake. Okay. So I'm going to give that, and then I want to give my font, I'm going to give it a color. Text color, right? And I'm going to just do, we're just going to do Fs on that. White. And then I'm going to do a little padding at the top. Padding top. And I'm just going to do one REM. So this could be 16 pixels. And I want to center the header content. So I'm going to do text align. Center. All right. And then I'm also going to want to do a style for my logo. Display block. Do margin 0 auto. Then I want to do a height of I think I'm going to do 7.5 REM, and I want to do a width of 12.5. All right. Let's see where we're at now. What do I have here? In here I have the H1. So I think I'm gonna do something similar to this. This isn't this one, right? This will be a different one. So okay, I'm gonna do H1 here. I kind of said this wasn't going to be a code along. It really isn't, you know, because you're going to do your own thing here. I'm just going through a little bit here, and then and I'm actually going to. I need to grab something that's a little different here on this. We'll do margin left, 1.25. Save that. Okay, so let's go look at this for now. Okay, you put it all the way over here, that's fine. Whatever. We'll run this again. Alright, great. Whatever. Okay. So if you're using LI tags, UL and LI tags, what you're going to have to do here on those, you're going to have to get rid of the some of the decorations, right? And then we want to make this, we want to make our navigation here, we don't make it flex, right? We want to use Flexbox on that. So what we're going to do next here is display flex. And since we are doing mobile first, we want to do our flex flex direction as column. And then, I don't know, let me just do a margin of 0 here. Get rid of that. And what I kind of do so a lot of times too is I put borders around things even if I don't really want them in my final, my final version, my final product. Sometimes borders really help with seeing where things are on the page because sometimes, you don't always see where something starts and ends, and you kind of, when you start having problems, it's nice to know that, where's that whole navigation, that whole tag, where's that, extending, what's the height, what's the width, and you can kind of visualize that, right? So I like to do that a lot, and it's more for almost debugging purposes than anything. Sometimes you can leave them, sometimes they look good as well, it depends on how you create them and stuff, but they definitely help with debugging. So solid, I'm doing a solid here, and I'm going to do kind of a gray color. Now, one thing I did want to mention, because we were talking about using these REMs and stuff instead of the pixels. Well, in most cases that's all right, but really when you get down to the smaller ones, and borders is one of them where you got 1 or 2 pixels. Usually anything less than 5 pixels, it's probably it's best just to that length. Anything less than 5 pixels, use pixels, right? Anything above 5 or greater, then you can use the REMs because it really, the numbers become very unusual to create, and 1 pixel is really not a big deal, especially when you're changing sizes of things. It makes a big difference when you're using bigger pixel numbers, right? So something to keep in mind there. Let me do here. Okay, background color. I think I'm going to do this. I think that's right. All right. Okay, so we got a different background on that. And now I'm going to do So here, because this is a unordered list, since this is an unordered list, we want to get rid of the list styles. So when you set that to none, and then, and so actually here, and we want to do a display flex on this as well. Flex direction, column. Okay. Align items. Center. All right. And then I want to go ahead and I want to put a little bit of spacing between my different links here on the right hand side of the screen, between home, about, all those different ones. So here I'm going to do a nav, and I'm going to do a margin bottom. That's why you don't want to, sometimes, you don't want to do margin using the regular margin one, because you're going to put it on something on everything, right? And sometimes you just want a margin on a specific direction. Here I just want a margin on the bottom, right? And so I think, what am I going to use here? I need to come up with I think this is going to be 5 here. So create a little more space, okay? So here's this is similar to the other one we were looking at for the most part. Similar to that, all right? So then the next thing I kind of want to show you, I'm not going to put all the content here. I'll discuss some of it. But I do want to mention about the media queries. Okay. And so whenever you do a media query, so media query is all about, it can be used for different purposes. It could be used for screens. It could be used for print too. So when you right click and print something, some web pages are not very printer friendly, right? Sometimes they have stuff all over the place, right? Or they, you might just want to have, there's an article on a page. You just want to print the basic art, that's, users just want the basic article. They don't want all these other advertisements and all this other stuff being printed, right? So you can actually create, you can use media queries to decide what to print and what not to print and so forth, right? And then also you can use media queries for different screen sizes as well, right? So there's different popular ones, and I think that this assignment asks for like 600, 900, 1200, and I think 2500. So here we do a media screen. Now, one thing that's very important to remember, and you can actually do screen only here, screen only, and I think that's correct. No, just screen and. I'm sorry, just screen and. So it's basically saying if this is a screen, right, which this is a screen, that's what we're using screens, and you want to do a min width here, and do a min width of 600 pixels. All right, get rid of that. What did I do? Okay, so I did. All right. So this is basically saying if the screen size, when you change your screen size, if it's at 600 pixels, it's going to change, right? If the once it gets You know, you're at 599. Once you reach 600, if you start small, this is less than 600, right? So once it reaches 600, it's going to go ahead and execute whatever's in here. It's going to end up applying, I shouldn't say execute, applying the styles that are in here. So basically, these are just CSS styles as well. Now, the thing to really remember, important to remember about this is you always want to make sure that these are at the end of the end of your CSS, right? Because if you end up having some styles after these media queries, that will be the last thing executed, right? And if it's something that you've changed in here, and now you ended up doing something down here, this won't be working, right? This won't help you there. So you always really want to make sure you have your media queries at the very end of your CSS file, or you obviously can have it within your embedded one as well in your embedded styles. But you always want to make sure you have your media queries at the bottom. Okay. So what we're kind of wanting to do here, and like especially for this lab, is let's see, are we using what are we using here? All right. So what we're going to want to do is for our, what do we do for header? Do we do a flex direction on our header here? Sorry, I'm bouncing around a little bit. No. So what we're wanting to do here on this is we're going to want to do our nav. In this case, we want to do a display. We want to do display what's already flex. So that's the thing. This is something actually I kind of need to explain too. Actually, we don't need to do this one. This is going to inherit anything that's already up here, right? It's going to inherit anything up there, but anything you put down here, it's going to change. If you change something different than what's up here, so here's your nav. Anything you change down there, it's going to overwrite. If you overwrite any of these, or if you put anything in here, it's going to overwrite. If it's the same here, it's going to override it. Or you can just add things, it's going to add to this list, right? Down here, though, right? But actually, what we're really wanting to do here, I think we want to go ahead and do this. So what I'm doing is I'm creating, so once this reaches 6, right now, you make this bigger, nothing's going to change, right? This is in column format. This is the mobile first column format. But, we want to change this based on our screen size, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a width of 100. And then I'm going to do a flex direction. We're going to do a different flex direction of row, right? We're in column, we want to be in row. And then I'm going to do a justify content to do space around. And I'm going to set the padding. I'm going to set the padding to 0, and I'm going to set the margin to 0. All right. Let's see what happens in this case here. See, as you can see, as our screen grew, right, once it reached that 600, the best way to do this is obviously using developer tools here, okay? So make sure you got this on mobile. You could have this on whatever, but obviously the smaller you got it, the little easier it is for moving it around standpoint. But if we go down here to something smaller, yeah, maybe this would be better for a little bigger, huh? So as you notice, if we go to 599 here, you put numbers in here if you like. If we go one more, we're going to hit that 600, right? So when we go one more, that changed. That went ahead and did the change for the flex direction, right? Added and then added everything else that's basically in that media queries, everything in the media queries. Okay. So that's how that works. So for this lab, you're going to have 600. I think you're going to have 900. So what you're going to be wanting to do here a little bit, because it's really not specific in the lab, just you can change some things in here, right? We're going to have, you're going to have some product images. Maybe when it gets, you've got what, 600, 900, 1200, and 2500. So based on that, you might, you make the font size bigger for a bigger screen, right? Or, you might want to change the images because you got more room for images. You can change the images. And, even if you just want to change some background colors, it's more for just practice learning the different breakpoints and how your page can change based on those breakpoints, right? So make sure that, for each one of those, you're doing something a little different, right? You're doing something a little different. The biggest one is this first one is when you're actually changing the flex direction from a column, which is the mobile first, for using a mobile, from the column perspective to a row, which would be a larger screen size, right? So that's that. All right. So what else I want to show you here? So, that was just the beginning of creating that. So that was just the navigation itself. Obviously, you can do things different. You should do things different, but this is just an example of what you can do. And then obviously that very first Flex Shop, that lab, there's a lot of good stuff in there. All right, you can use that to help you. There's just some other things I just kind of want to point out a little bit. So always remember, make sure your media queries are last, because if you have some CSS over there, whatever's last in your CSS file is going to take precedence. It's a good idea to use the relative units for your different sizes of things on your page. And consistency is important, right? Try to keep things consistent. So one thing, let's go look at a couple other things here. So one thing, sometimes you have problems centering things. I know that that's kind of a challenge. And sometimes wonder, like sometimes, you figure out if something block or not. So here, actually, I think this is in a different, get this over here. Let me do this here. Okay. So for our footer down here, if I, what did we do on this footer? Oh, this is the wrong one. No, it's not. So sometimes I end up to make this like, let me just get rid of this. Just, just a little stuff here, because sometimes it can be a challenge. That didn't change how I expected to change, but that's okay. Hold on, bear with me here for a minute, sorry. Okay. Now as far as the HTML here. So one thing I did, there's different ways to do this. But so I have this main content here. This main goes down to here. So your side tag isn't really a part of main. Okay. So what I did in this circumstance is I wanted to make sure I associate that I associate okay, that's kind of getting on my There's over there. So I wanted to make sure I associate so that this whole section here, I wanted to have that in the same container as this, so that I can change the order of the container to move it down. I mean, to move it over here on the right-hand side. Okay. So what I did was I wrapped this whole part, all these sections, which these sections are these sections up here, these whole sections, and then to wrap all of this together with this one. Okay, so so this is kind of one piece, so that when I make changes, this thing ain't really lining up right. So I make changes to this, it's easier to handle from a flex perspective. I don't know if that makes sense or not. So what I did here is my aside section, I allow that to grow. Okay, did I do an order in here? Maybe I didn't do an order in here. So what this is actually doing, it's based on the size of this. Got my main at 3.5. Yeah, and so that determines how much space things taken up. So if, let's just say I make this 2.5. Make this 1.5 just to show you. So it made this bigger, right? So you change the first one is grow. So I want this to be take up more room than this. The side needs to be a lot smaller, right? So you can control that like that. All right. Let's look at that assignment again here. All right. So we just kind of went through the navigation a little bit. So we did that part. And then you want to do a main section with 3 sections of comments and a grid of 4 products. Let me show you that real quick here. So I'll send you information on grid. Not much you need to do. It's pretty basic. Shouldn't be too much of a problem. But make sure that obviously you want to create it. You want to make sure that when you create it for mobile first. So have all your styles being from a column perspective, and then as you reach these different breakpoints, right? So you're gonna have media query for 600, 900, one for 900, one for 1200, and one for 2500. And then at each of those, it tells you, some things that you need to kind of change when it reaches a certain point. I think, don't it? Maybe not necessarily, but you definitely want to go when it gets from mobile size. When you get to that 600, you want to go ahead and flip that to from column to row. Okay. And then as you progressively get bigger, you can make some changes to your, to the media query to make some changes to the page. Like I said, you maybe some font sizes, some image size differences, and if you kind of can't come up with anything, you can always change some colors or whatever just to make it look a little different, just so that you can make sure that you have some stuff in each one of these queries, right? For each breakpoint, right? Yep. And so you want to make sure the side is going to be on the right side of the main on the desktop, and then on the mobile phones it will be, below. Must be placed above the main. Oh, okay. Actually, I had mine done wrong. So have that aside above the main. So you're gonna, you might have a little bit of challenges with that. You want to include that above the main. Okay. So you can use the order for that to move that so that you have above the main. That order property for the flex on the specific item. So I really don't have anything else. Just please let me know if you have any other questions about this. And obviously, if you do the flex shop first, and maybe it's up to you. That lab 3, this is the lab 2, but if lab 3 may be simpler, do that first and do this one. That's up to you. Just let me know if you have any questions about any of this.